Hi, I'm Mara. My sister once looked me in the eye and said, "You'll always be family." A week later, she stood next to my fiance, smiling, while they both signed the papers that took everything I had: my house, my car, my name, off every deed and document. And they toasted to it. They clinked glasses like it was some kind of achievement. Red wine, laughter, my whole life dissolving behind their grins. They emptied my accounts, sold my Subaru, threw a party in my house without me. There were candles burning on the table I built with my own hands. Someone posted photos of them holding drinks in my kitchen, where my grandmother's teacups used to sit. They celebrated what they stole like it was theirs to begin with. And the worst part? They looked happy. But I didn't scream. I didn't break down. I didn't even argue. I just got quiet. I let the world think I'd vanished. And while they clinked glasses and rearranged my furniture, I started collecting every receipt, every document, every whisper of a signature that didn't belong to me. Because silence isn't weakness. Silence listens, it watches, and it waits. They thought they'd won because I didn't fight back loud enough. Because I didn't make a scene. But what they didn't know was that I never needed noise. Silence was the sharpest thing I had left. The casserole was bubbling in the oven, filling the kitchen with the kind of warmth that settles in your bones. Rosemary, cream, a hint of garlic, it smelled like comfort. I wiped my hands on the apron I'd had for years, the blue one with the little front pocket my niece used to hide cereal in when she was small. For once, the house was quiet. No emails. No errands. Just sunlight sliding through the window and catching on the pale tile floor. This house, I built it piece by piece. 10 years of double shifts, missed birthdays, and no vacations. Every inch of it was mine. I still remember painting the porch that spring, barefoot and sunburned, thinking maybe things were finally falling into place. The plumbing gave me hell that winter, but I fixed it myself. Flashlight between my teeth, YouTube playing on my phone. I was proud of this place. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. That Sunday, I'd invited Celeste and Griffin over for brunch. Nothing dramatic, just a little get-together. I set the table carefully, matching everything, trying not to care too much, but I did. I always did. Celeste walked in first. Her voice echoed down the hallway before I saw her. "Wow, Mara," she said, a little too loud for the calm. "This place is perfect for entertaining." I turned from the stove, forced a smile. "Thanks. Took a while to get it the way I wanted." She didn't really answer. Just gave one of those vague hums and wandered into the living room like she was already giving herself a tour. Her eyes skipped over the framed note from our grandmother, the one in her handwriting above the fireplace. I don't think she even noticed it. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care. Griffin came in a moment later. He kissed my cheek, quick, distracted. "Hey," he said, already pulling out his phone. No eye contact. No warmth. Just the glow of the screen lighting up his face. He wasn't usually like that. At least, he hadn't been. Not so distant. Not so cold. I told myself maybe he was just tired. Maybe something was off at work. Maybe they'd argued on the way over. My mind tried to fill in the blanks, to explain away the chill I felt growing in the room. Celeste started walking around like she was assessing the place. "You could knock out this wall and open up the kitchen completely," she said, sipping the coffee I'd just made her. "Have you ever thought about hardwood floors?" I laughed softly, trying to keep the mood light. "It's not a flip, Celeste." She tilted her head and smiled. "Of course." Griffin didn't say much. Just sat by the window, scrolling through his phone. Occasionally, he'd glance up and smirk. At what? I didn't know. I tried to meet his eyes a few times, but he never looked back. Still, I served the food, asked about work, poured coffee, acted like everything was fine. Like I didn't notice how they were moving through my space like it already belonged to someone else. After they left, I stood at the sink, rinsing dishes that hadn't really been used. My hands moved automatically, like they didn't belong to me. The steam rose in soft curls, and all I could hear was the echo of her voice in my head. "Is your name still on the deed?" She'd asked me that once. It had sounded like a joke, light, passing. I laughed then. Of course it is. But something in her tone had rattled me. And Griffin? He'd shrugged and said, "We sorted the paperwork, babe. Just easier with one name, tax stuff." I didn't remember signing anything, but I'd been so busy lately, picking up extra shifts, wedding planning, handling appointments Griffin said stressed him out too much. Maybe I had signed something. Maybe I didn't. Look closely. Maybe it was easier. But the way they glanced at each other that morning, just for a second, like they were already on the same page, one I hadn't read, that glance stayed with me long after the sink had gone quiet. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the way they looked at each other over coffee, the way Griffin kept scrolling like he didn't care if I saw, it sat in my chest like a stone. I called my friend Laurel in Davis and told her I needed to clear my head. She said to come over, no questions. I packed a small bag, left a note on the counter for Griffin, just said I needed a breather. I didn't mention Celeste. I didn't mention the deed. The next morning, I came back just after 10. My neighbor, Mrs. Halprin, was out front walking her dog. She waved at me, but it was strange, almost hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she should. "Oh," she said, pulling her cardigan tighter. "You're still here?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" She paused, glanced toward the house, then back at me. "I thought you'd moved. Your sister. And that man had people over yesterday. Big crowd. Looked like a farewell thing." I smiled. Just a little, just enough to be polite. But inside, my stomach dropped. My hands started to shake before I even reached the front door. The lock turned easily. I stepped inside and stopped. It didn't smell like me anymore. It smelled like perfume I didn't wear, wine I didn't drink. The cushions on the couch were fluffed differently. The Afghan my grandmother made wasn't folded on the armrest where I always kept it. The framed photo of me and my dad from Yosemite, gone. In the kitchen, the counters had been wiped, too clean, like someone had scrubbed away every trace of me. I saw it then, sitting beside the sink, a plastic party cup. Silver marker on the side, curved and confident. Celeste's housewarming bash. I opened the fridge. Half the casserole I'd made was gone. So was the bottle of sparkling cider I'd saved for our anniversary. I walked down the hallway like a stranger in my own life, the floor creaking under my feet in all the wrong places. In the guest bedroom, someone had slept in the bed. The sheets were wrinkled. My robe still hung behind the door, but my slippers were gone. Griffin's shoes weren't by the closet where he usually left them. It was like the house had been divided, part his, part Celeste's, and my part had been erased. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the cold tile. I whispered to myself, "I'm still here. This is still mine. For now." Then I stood up, walked to the garage, and opened the door slowly, expecting to see the same mess I always promised I'd clean: old paint cans, boxes of Christmas lights, my bike in the corner. But half of it was gone. The vintage Schwinn, missing. But worse, so much worse, was the empty space where my red filing cabinet had stood for years. It was the one I never touched unless I had to. Tax records, car title, insurance policies, the deed to the house. Everything I couldn't afford to lose lived in that cabinet. I checked behind the water heater, near the tool shelf, on the upper racks. Nothing. Not even a paperclip left behind. I just stood there staring at the space where it used to be. That wasn't clutter. That wasn't mess. That was precision. That was intentional. I didn't take off my coat. I rushed back inside to the office, my little corner room that always smelled like printer paper and old lavender. The boxes on the shelf looked untouched, but I knew better. I opened one, then another. My folders had been rearranged, tabs bent, color-coded labels jumbled. My careful order wrecked. None of Griffin's stuff was missing. His receipts, lease agreement from before we moved in, passport, all still in his drawer. But mine? My car paperwork, the house title, the folder labeled Day Family Assets, gone. My fingers trembled as I picked up my phone. I texted him. Where's the red cabinet? Why are my documents gone? No response. I called, straight to voicemail. I sat at the desk, heart pounding, and typed Sacramento County Title Office into Google. Called the number listed. Hi. I need to check on a property. It's mine. It was mine. Can I check the title record? The woman on the other end was polite, calm, asked for the parcel number. I gave her the address. She put me on hold. I waited. 10 seconds. 30. A full minute. I stared at the photos on the wall, still trying to believe this was just a mistake. Then, she came back. Her tone had changed. Barely. But enough. It looks like the property was refinanced about 3 months ago under a new agreement. What? I whispered. There's a notarized document. The new title is held under a business entity, Kelmer Holdings. Primary owner, Griffin Shore. Secondary, Celeste Day. My throat went dry. That's my sister. Another pause. I'm sorry, ma'am, but your name isn't on the current deed. I didn't say anything else. Just hung up. I stared at the wall across from my desk until the edges started to blur. 3 months ago. That was when Griffin said he'd take care of the wedding paperwork, that I should focus on work and not worry about the legal stuff. And I didn't. I trusted him. I let them both move through my life with ease, with my signature, with my keys, and now I wasn't even on the deed, not on the house I built, not on the life I created, and they were celebrating it. With wine glasses in hand. I didn't cry. Not this time. I just sat at my desk, still in my coat, fingers cold, and opened Griffin's laptop. Same password it had always been. He never thought I'd check. Or maybe he assumed I'd be too broken to try. The desktop looked normal. Wedding spreadsheets, photos from a bachelor party, invoices from his freelance projects. I clicked through them, steady, quiet. Then I found a folder buried under tax estimates. Wedding budget final. I opened it. Near the bottom, almost hidden, was a PDF titled Auto Refi Contract Row PDF. My heart thudded as I clicked. It was a scanned loan agreement on bank letterhead. My name, printed neatly at the top. My signature at the bottom. At first glance, it looked real. But something was wrong. The R didn't curl the way I write it. The tail on the D was too straight, too careful. It was close enough to pass if you weren't looking, but I was. I knew my own handwriting. I scrolled further. In the fine print, my stomach turned. It listed my car, 2018 Subaru Outback, VIN ending in 4872, as collateral. That was the only thing I still had, or so I thought. I bolted up and ran to the front window. The driveway was empty. No Subaru. I ran outside, scanning the street. Nothing. Griffin had dropped me off that morning from Laurel's. I never even thought to ask where the car was. Back inside, the silence felt heavy again, but not like before. This time it wasn't grief sitting on my chest. It was something sharper, more awake. I walked slowly to the den, pulled open the bottom drawer of the desk, and found the notebook I used to track home expenses. I hadn't touched it in months. It was dusty, but intact. I flipped to a fresh page. Date, March 17th. Last time I saw the house deed in person, 3 months ago, before Celeste's bridal brunch. Final catering check, $6,020, paid by me. Refinance. Date per title office, 3 days after the brunch. Signature on loan, forged. Vehicle listed as collateral, unauthorized. Company listed, Calmere Holdings. Registered to Celeste. I didn't even pause. Each line felt like breath, like proof I was still here. I flipped to another page. Wrote faster this time. Griffin's business license. Suspended last year. No active income since. Used my accounts for household bills. Filed joint planning documents for wedding, but vendor contracts in his name. I leaned back, staring at the words. It wasn't pain anymore. It wasn't confusion. It was a map. They hadn't just fooled me. They built this together, piece by piece, knowing I wouldn't question them, knowing I trusted too easily, believed too deeply in the idea of family. Stood up, walked to the hall closet, and pulled down a little wooden box I hadn't opened in years. Inside, wedged between old greeting cards and loose receipts, was a USB drive. The Sharpie label was almost rubbed off, but I could still make out the faint writing. Taxes 2018 and 2021. Back then, I used to organize everything for Griffin. Scanned every invoice, saved every email, color-coded folders he couldn't even find. Without me. He used to joke I was the only reason his business stayed afloat. Turns out, I'd been archiving my own rescue plan. I plugged the drive into my laptop. And there it was. A folder full of files I'd forgotten I ever touched, copies of insurance forms, email threads with banks, old contracts with scanned signatures, real ones. Proof. That night, my hands didn't shake when I worked. I opened every file, labeled every folder, made copies, sent backups to myself. Everything they thought I'd lost, everything they thought I'd never catch. I had it. Later, I made tea. Sat on the couch alone in the rental I'd found the day before, and let the quiet wrap around me. My mind drifted back to the brunch. Celeste's bridal brunch 3 months ago. It was early spring then, too. Sacramento in bloom. She'd picked out a lavender dress for me to wear. I still have it somewhere, wrinkled in a garment bag I haven't touched since. I remember writing the check for the catering from my personal account. She hadn't even said thank you, just waved and pulled Griffin toward the mimosa station. They were glowing, laughing, surrounded by friends. I was the only sister. And still, somehow, I felt like a guest at my own life. That was the moment I now believe it all turned. They hadn't just planned the wedding that day. They planned my exit. Celeste hugged me before I left. Tight. Her perfume was strong, gardenia, with something sharp underneath. She whispered, "I'm so glad you're part of the family now." I smiled. Of course I did. Because that's all I ever wanted. To belong. To be seen. Now, sitting in a rental that smelled like paint and detergent, I knew that hug was never meant to welcome me in. It was a distraction, a sleight of hand, her way of saying goodbye without actually saying it. This wasn't grief anymore. It was clarity. Celeste stood at my front door like nothing had happened. Hair pinned perfectly, makeup soft and subtle, like she'd just stepped out of a boutique ad. In one hand, she held a pastry box tied with a velvet ribbon. The other hovered midair, about to knock again. I opened the door before she could. She smiled like it was any other Saturday. I brought cake, not high, not can we talk, just sugar and a ribbon. We sat across from each other in a corner booth at Rosewood Cafe, a place we used to love before she turned it into a wedding planning headquarters. The smell of espresso and lemon zest drifted between us, soft jazz playing low from a speaker near the window. She slid the pastry box across the marble table without meeting my eyes. I thought we should talk, clear the air. I didn't reach for the box, didn't even glance at it. My hands stayed folded. "You should have texted sooner," I said. "Before I found your voice in the background of Griffin's voicemail." She blinked, barely. Looked out the window for a beat, then turned back, syrupy as ever. "I didn't know what Griffin was doing, Mara. He told me you were leaving the city. That you didn't want the house anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "And that made sense to you?" She gave me a tight, polite smile. "He said you needed a fresh start." I believed him. The silence between us grew long. I let it stretch. She reached for her latte, took a slow sip, then added, "You're still family. I never stopped seeing you that way." I leaned forward. "You saw me enough to help transfer the house out of my name." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. There it was, a flicker, the first crack. "I thought it was for the best," she said finally. Quiet. "For whom?" She didn't answer. Just stared down into the foam of her drink like it held something she'd lost. The waitress came by to check on us. "Everything okay here?" Celeste smiled, all teeth and charm. "Yes, thank you." When we were alone again, I opened my purse and pulled out the manila folder I'd been carrying for 3 days. I waited until she reached for another pastry, habit, and then placed it right in front of her. Inside, copies of the quitclaim deed, notarized the day before her bridal brunch. My name, forged. Griffin's name front and center, her own scribbled in at the bottom. She froze. Hand midair, breath caught. "This is fraud," I said, my voice calm. "And I'm filing." She went pale, not dramatically, just a shade quieter, in the cheeks like the blood pulled back in retreat. "Mara, not here," she hissed, glancing at the couple seated 2 booths away. "Don't make a scene." "Oh, now it matters who's watching?" She swallowed hard. Her mask was cracking, fine lines where control used to be. She stood up too fast. The chair scraped back against the tile, loud. A few heads turned. Her smile came back, but it was glass now, thin and shaky. "Thanks for the coffee," I said, quietly. She didn't reply. Just grabbed her bag and walked out, heels clicking too fast like she had somewhere to be that didn't include me. I stayed. Finished my drink. Opened my email app. There was a draft waiting, written at midnight 2 nights ago. Subject: property theft and fraudulent transfer. I attached the documents. No extra words, just facts. I hit send and sat back. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel lost. I felt ready. The rooftop shimmered with string lights and soft jazz. Laughter floated above the city like nothing had ever gone wrong. Glasses clinked. Someone snapped a photo. Celeste and Griffin were at the center of it all, glowing, like betrayal looked good under warm bulbs and a sunset sky. I didn't RSVP. I didn't have to. I just walked in. The bartender blinked when he saw me. I kept it simple. "Water, please." Across the patio, Griffin was mid-sentence when he saw me. He froze. His drink tilted slightly in his hand. I didn't stop. I walked straight toward him. "Nice venue," I said softly. "Would be a shame if the IRS showed up asking about undeclared wire transfers." Before he could speak, I slipped a folded napkin into his jacket pocket. On it, in neat handwriting, "I know everything. Sleep well." I turned and walked away, not looking back. Minutes later, Celeste took the mic. The music faded out. All eyes turned to her just the way she liked it. She was dressed in pale blue, hair pinned high, one hand delicately resting on her stomach like a secret she couldn't wait to spill. "She still came," she said into the mic, her voice syrupy sweet. "Even after trying to ruin our engagement with fake allegations." The crowd gave a few confused murmurs. A woman near the champagne tower clapped once, unsure. Griffin stepped forward, laughing like this was some bizarre rom-com. "She's obsessed," he said, waving it off. "She's having a hard time letting go." There it was. The performance. A full house. Their stage. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. Celeste beamed wider, took Griffin's hand. "We weren't going to say anything yet," she cooed. "But we can't hold it in anymore." Pause. Smile. Perfect timing. I'm pregnant. The applause was instant, thunderous. Someone popped another bottle of champagne. A camera flash hit my eyes, and in the background of it all, I heard her voice, just under the cheers, speaking to Griffin, thinking no one else could hear. We didn't want to say it yet, but we figured it'd make the script surprise more. Exciting. Script. I pressed stop on the recording I'd started the moment I walked in. Saved the file. On my way down the marble steps, I sent the audio to 2 people. First, my attorney, with the subject line "timeline discrepancy, probable fraud." Second, Uncle Frank, the family trustee. The man who once told me, "You're the only one who doesn't posture for my attention." I added a simple message. "Play this before signing anything." I didn't go home. I didn't go back to the rental either. I drove through old streets I hadn't touched in years, past the neighborhood where I used to ride my bike barefoot and fearless. I ended up outside the house I grew up in. The porch light was still on. My mother's light was always on. But I didn't ring the bell. I slipped around the side, under the creaky wood eaves and opened the screen door to my old bedroom. The lock was still busted. No one had ever fixed it. Inside, everything looked smaller, but the scent hadn't changed. Vanilla, cedar, dust. My books were still on the shelf, the quilt folded at the foot of the bed. I sat on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, and let the silence sit with me. Eventually, I stood, opened the closet. Behind the forgotten boots and coats, I found a shoebox. I pulled it out and opened it slowly. On top, a Polaroid me, Celeste, Griffin, standing in front of the fireplace, arms looped, smiling like fools. Back when I believed them. Back when I called that house home. I held the photo for a long time, not in anger, just acknowledgement. Then, I tore it in half clean and quiet. Later that night, I went back to the rental, changed into fresh clothes, made tea, and opened my laptop. On the desktop, I created a new folder. I named it Reclaiming Everything. Then, one by one, I began uploading every document, every receipt, every screenshot. Not to mourn, to build. The conference room smelled like wood polish and cold coffee. A long table stretched between us. Polished, heavy, formal. I sat at the head. Not out of ego. Out of earned position. My hands rested calmly on the folder in front of me, fingers still. They walked in 5 minutes late. Griffin first, collared. Shirt too crisp, like he was trying to iron over guilt. Celeste followed, heels sharp against the floor, every hair in place, expression unreadable. But her eyes didn't meet mine. Uncle Frank closed the door behind them with a quiet click. No, one spoke. The attorney, Mr. Halverson, nodded and opened the meeting. This is to address the contested transfer of property and review documents related to the family trust. Before he could say more, Uncle Frank slid a manila folder across the table, directly to Celeste. That's the amendment our father signed before his stroke, he said. It was sealed and filed. He asked me not to disclose it until absolutely necessary. Neither of them reached for it. Griffin finally looked down, scanned the top page. His face changed, just a shade too fast. Celeste didn't move at all. Mr. Halverson adjusted his glasses and began reading aloud. In the case of financial fraud or unauthorized transfer involving any shared property to which Mara Day has contributed more than 50%, sole ownership shall revert to her upon verified breach. I didn't blink. Didn't speak. That includes the house, I said quietly. The vehicle, and any profits from their sale. The silence was sharp, clean. Celeste's mouth opened, but no sound came. Then she whispered, "This is forged." Uncle Frank didn't flinch. I notarized it myself. The original is with the family trust. You're welcome to challenge it in court, but I wouldn't recommend it. Griffin tried to speak. His mouth moved, but all he managed was a stammer. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, tapped on a recording, and placed it gently in the center of the table. Then I pressed play. Griffin's voice filled the room, calm at first, then colder. Look, I know it's Mara's house, but she's too nice to press charges. We'll just gaslight her until she gives up. Someone at the far end of the table gasped. Griffin lunged forward. You recorded me? I met his eyes, steady. You recorded yourself. You synced your new phone to my iCloud. You never unsynced it. He froze. His hands curled into fists, but he didn't speak again. The attorney's assistant leaned forward. We'll need a copy of that file, Ms. Day. Already sent, I said. Celeste still hadn't looked at me. She was staring just past my shoulder, like if she focused hard enough, none of this would be real. I reached into my purse one last time, took out a tarnished key, set it gently on the table. It was engraved with my initials, MD, the same one I'd put on the ring of keys the day I first signed the deed. I turned it so it faced Griffin. Return everything, I said, calm, final. He didn't reach for it. Celeste stood, abrupt. Her chair screeched against the wood, breaking the stillness. This isn't over, she hissed, eyes narrow, voice low. I met her gaze with the same stillness she once mistook for weakness. It was over, I said. The moment you called me family and helped steal everything. I built. Mr. Halverson raised a hand, clearing his throat. There will be civil proceedings. I suggest you both prepare. Outside, I heard the buzz before I saw them. Reporters, 2 TV vans on the sidewalk. Word had gotten out. This time, I didn't shrink. I stood, smoothed my blouse, walked out the front door with no speech, no tears, just the weight of truth behind me. I didn't go back to the old house. Not once. I drove by once, windows down, my hair loose in the breeze. But I didn't stop. It sat there, polished and hollow, a lie with new fixtures and fake flowers on the porch. Instead, I poured myself into my new studio. I'd rented it from a retired bookbinder who loved quiet as much as I did. The floor was concrete. The light came in soft through tall windows. I filled it with presses, type blocks, drawers of thick paper, tubes of ink in rust and plum and ochre. On Saturdays, I opened the door to a few high school girls. I taught them letterpress, binding, how to press words into paper deep enough to last. One afternoon, Maya, my youngest cousin, watched me set a printing plate. "You're not afraid of anything," she said softly. I looked at her, held her gaze. "I used to be," she nodded. No more questions. She understood. Now I fear silence less than betrayal, solitude more than shallow praise. I don't need applause to know who I am. Sometimes the ones who call you family are the ones who fear your power the most. Have you ever been betrayed by someone who swore they loved you? Someone who said you were family? Tell me how you rose. I read every word. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Because sometimes the comeback isn't loud, it's just real.